105, so I'll just jump right into it. I'm super excited. My name is Brandon Hay. I'm the program manager with Toronto Community Benefits Network, and I'm the host of Career Talks in Construction and Trades. Today, we'll be talking about the future of construction and trades jobs in Toronto and how to deal with the labor shortage. Really excited about the panel that we put together for folks today. We have Armine, Hartley, and Patricia, and I will go into their bios shortly. Just to give you a little bit about the agenda, we'll talk a little bit about asking folks how to identify yourself on the screen. We're going to do a land acknowledgement, talk about the purpose of the career talks, do a little bit of housekeeping, how to get involved with TCBN. Then we jump into conversation with the panel, and then we take questions from the audience to the panelists. We'll be talking a little bit about, I'll mention briefly the next upcoming session, and then how you can stay connected and how you can watch this video or share this video later on when we post it on YouTube. So in this moment, I'm going to ask folks if you can go onto your screen and just write your name on the screen in this format. If you could just write your name, followed by your gender pronoun, as well as your geographic location. So as an example, that would be, I have it as Brandon. My gender pronoun is he or him, and my geographic location is Toronto. So I'll leave this up. And you can, if you don't know, you can go on your screen, and there should be 3 dots, and you go to it and type in rename, and at that point you would just do the following format. So I'm gonna give folks a couple seconds to do this adjustment. And if you just came into the space, we're asking folks just to write your name on your screen, your first name or your first and last name, followed by your gender pronoun and your geographic location. Okay. We're going to take some time to do a land acknowledgement. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are on Indigenous land. We are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land. We recognize and deeply appreciate the historic connection to this place. This recognition of the contributions and historic importance of Indigenous peoples must also be clearly and overtly connected to our collective commitment to make the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our communities. We are all treaty people. Many of us have come here as settlers, immigrants, newcomers in this generation or generations past. I'd like to also acknowledge those of us who came here involuntarily as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. And so I honor and pay tribute to the ancestors of African origin and descent. A little bit about the career talks. The career talks in construction and trades conversation came out of COVID-19. And basically it's the opportunity for folks to engage with various experts from various unions, constructions, and trade sector. The goal is that you will get a firsthand what it takes to get into that specific trade. This is also a great opportunity to build and to network, also to decrease any isolation that you might be navigating due to COVID-19 and physical distancing. A little bit about some housekeeping. Feel free to use the chat function to write your questions down. We've moved over to a webinar format. So I'll be checking in on the questions in terms of, and then at the end of the panel, I can either read out the questions, or if folks would like to, I'm definitely invite folks to get their voices in. I will bring you over as a panelist to ask your question, and then I'll put you back into the attendee after you've asked your question. These conversations will be recorded and archived on the TCBN website, as well as on social media, such as our YouTube page for public viewing. And as I said before, we'll be answering the questions at the end of the panel discussion. So please write your questions in the chat. How to get involved with the TCBN program department. So you can, we have the Next Gen Builders Mentorship Program. One of our speakers, Hartley, is one of the master mentors in that program. And we are still accepting mentees, peer mentors, and master mentors. And we also have the Quick Start in Construction program. And this is our pre-apprenticeship program. This year, we're going to be launching our Newcomer Pathway into Construction program. And if folks are interested in this program, we'll be doing a community town hall, online community town hall in February. And then we're also launching our apprenticeship readiness curriculum, which we've been working on for the past year and a bit. We've been working with different unions, pre-apprenticeship programs, and this is for other pre-apprenticeship programs out there that would like to get support with their curriculum. They can use this format, take any of the curriculum that we have there in this program, and put it and tailor it into their own programs. If for that program or any of the programs, you can contact me directly at bhay@communitybenefits.ca. Okay, now to the panelists. Armine Yalnizyan is a leading voice on Canada's economic scene and the Atkinson Foundation's Fellow on the Future of Workers. She served as Senior Economic Policy Advisor for the Deputy Minister at Employment and Social Development Canada from 2018 to 2019. She helped lead the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives Inequality Project from 2008 to 2017 and provided weekly business commentaries on CBC Radio and CBC TV from 2011 to 2018. She is past president of the Canadian Association for Business Economics and coined the term She Session in March. Hartley Ellis, Red Seal endorsed, is a compliance enforcement, has been a compliance and enforcement officer since 2013, investigator inspector. Mr. Ellis first pursued a career as a collision technician. He studied at Centennial College and obtained his certificate of qualification in 2004. Now he also teaches part-time at Centennial College in the very program from which he graduated. Mr. Ellis frequently advocates the importance of promoting trades to young people, and Hartley is a longtime support of the Ontario Skills Competitions, in which he won gold medals in 2002 to 2004. He has served as co-chair of the Auto Body competition since 2011. And one thing that's not here is that Hartley is one of our master mentors in our Next Gen Builders program. Patricia Tejeda, from the Dominican Republic, mother of two young children, experienced professional in logistics and distribution, and eager to enter the construction field. Patricia graduated from TCBN's Quick Start in Construction Pre-Apprenticeship Program, as well as the Next Gen Builders Mentorship Program. She was placed into one of our construction union partners. However, due to childcare challenges, wasn't able to participate in employment. She would love to, in the near future, be able to advise or give opportunities to women that are currently in a similar position. So I'm going to start with you, Armine, just to give some contextualization around labor shortage in the construction. Sorry, I'm going to bring up my screen here. In terms of labor shortage in Toronto and the need for innovative approaches. So the first question I'm going to ask you, Armine, is there currently a problem in the construction sector's ability to meet the demands due to labor shortage? If so, how do we fill it?
Thank you, Brandon. And I want to thank you for organizing this event and including me in it. I'm speaking to you from unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory, and a reminder that we are all just passing through wherever it is that we physically are. And it is our job to take care of one another and the places where we live. So it's really important for us to think about how are we taking care of one another in the places where we live. And part of that is physically maintaining as well as building the places where we are. We know that about a fifth, about 22% of the construction workforce in Canada is aging out. We can expect them to leave the job in the next 5 to 10 years. That might have accelerated because of COVID, because a lot of older people are choosing to not expose themselves unnecessarily to risk. And the thing about population aging, which is certainly not just Canada's problem, it's a problem all over the world in the global north, is that more people are leaving the labor market than coming in. So we have a number of estimates that show that we're going to need approximately 100,000 new people in the construction industry over the course of the next decade. That represents an enormous opportunity to bring opportunity to people who have been historically sidelined, not able to take part in some of the most rewarding, both in terms of the nature of the work, as well as in terms of pay and benefits, some of the most rewarding work that is available. And irrespective of what happens going forward because of the pandemic, we will need more people, more tradesmen, and associated people, the administrative people, the engineers, the management related occupations that go with this whole industry. We're going to need more of all of these people and trades in the years to come, because we're going to need to retrofit some of our office buildings. We're going to need to renovate some of the homes in which we live. We're going to need to build new homes, and we're going to need to build new types of workspaces. And all of that work requires the ticketed trades, as well as just general labor, as well as all the ancillary supports. Now, we know that about a quarter of Ontario's construction workforce is made up of newcomers. And that's the moment that we are facing right now. Historically, in the wake of the global financial crisis, 2008 and 2009, we had a ton of money invested in infrastructure to stimulate the economy. But there were a lot of building contractors who won those public contracts and then filled them with migrant workers from other countries, instead of making sure young people in Canada got the training and the jobs that naturally flow from this kind of investment in infrastructure. So, for example, when a fully ticketed journeyman comes in at cheaper than a 3-year apprentice in construction, in carpentry, it's kind of a no-brainer for the construction company. So we need to be really vigilant about what we are asking for as we pour public money into the public projects that need to be done, and make sure that we are sharing the opportunities that exist.
Thank you for that. How can we address the labor shortage in construction in Toronto?
Well, I think you can do it both through the private sector's own initiatives as well as through public funding. Public funding TCBN is all about using the public dollars that are already flowing to lever new benefits for communities, primarily through employment opportunities, but in other ways too. You can actually build community benefits in a number of ways. As you develop public resources and assets, or just rehabilitate them. So that's one way of doing it, is through the public money that's flowing through infrastructure projects. And the other way, through the private sector, is making sure that the trade unions themselves are actually more involved as hiring halls, and more involved. It's only the trade unions that are providing the training anyway, and to ensure that continues to happen, and working with the colleges to bring in more people, and making sure that the unions themselves are advocating for people just like Patricia, actually. to make sure that the underlying support structures are in place so that everybody can take advantage of the opportunities that are there. And that means treating childcare like critical social infrastructure, every bit as critical as roads and bridges that we travel on, because without that care support, too many people can't take advantage of what's there.
I mean, to that point, I was researching for this session. I was watching, I was reading a CBC article, and it was on the website actually, and it was mentioning that women are the hardest hit by COVID-19 in terms of employment. Do you mind just saying a little bit on that, please?
Happy to do that. You know, I coined the term she-cession, which was picked up by an American journalist, and I'm now seeing it all over the world. I coined it in March because I'm a labor market economist. And back in 2008-9, after the global financial crisis, it was the New York Times that called what was happening then a he-cession. Well, every recession is a he-cession. In other words, people that do construction, people that do manufacturing lose their jobs first. People that do mining lose their jobs first. And it's usually the women that come in and do the lower paid jobs in the initial stages of recovery. And the reason why women come in to do the lower paid jobs is men who have been working in construction, in mining, in manufacturing, tend to get paid more. So they don't want to do the more poorly paid service sector jobs that inevitably spring up after an economic crisis. But women are willing to do it because their family needs groceries. And this is the first recession where that whole story was reversed. So it was a service, it was the stoppage of non-essential businesses, the majority of which are services, the majority of which are staffed by women. So more women lost jobs than men. More poorly paid workers, people of color, recent immigrants, young people, and women lost paid hours of work and their jobs entirely because these non-essential services shut down to contain the contagion. But the longer the pandemic lasts, the more those businesses will be gone. And the people that got their jobs back much faster were higher paid men. And of course, higher paid women too. But so it's exactly the reversal of what we've seen in every other recession in the 20th and thus far in the 21st century. So I called it a she-cession and said there will be no recovery macroeconomically. We cannot get back to where the amount of value we were producing in the economy, measured by GDP, we can't get back there without more women coming back in to the labor market. So my slogan for the era was, my hit summer tune was, no recovery without a she-covery, no she-covery without childcare. And, you know, there's been crickets on the childcare front. We've been losing childcare capacity throughout the pandemic. So it is not only difficult for women to get back in because so many of the jobs they had were in marginal restaurants, retail, personal services, companies that were small and weren't making a lot of money to begin with. When they lose that much business, they can't stay open. So there's no job to go back to. Then there's a whole bunch of women who were working from home who then had to do homeschooling and free childcare and can't keep up with the workload and either have their hours of paid work cut or they lose their jobs. So, and then there's a third category of people that are just giving up and saying, I'm not looking for work. I can't handle all of these things. So we're seeing more women withdraw from the labor market as the pandemic continues, which is hugely problematic because half of our people on payroll in Canada going into the pandemic, half of our payroll was going to women. Half of the employees on payroll were women. And so if you knock out a bunch of those people, there just aren't enough men to make up for the difference. So we're talking about a broad-based drag on recovery. So this isn't a feminist problem. It's a macroeconomic problem. It's a business problem. If you knock out too much purchasing power in households because people have lost hours of paid work and it isn't being replaced, people just spend less. If people spend less, more businesses really suffer and more of them will close. So it looks like a feminist trope, but it's actually an economic problem. It's a mathematical problem. And we got to get more women back into the workforce if we want to so-called get back to normal. Of course, we should want to get back to more than what we had in February of 2020.
And you kind of touched on it just now, but if you can delve in a little bit, what is causing the drag in the construction sector to meet existing demands?
Well, there are labor shortages, obviously, but there's also a lack of funding to keep things going. So, here's the tightrope that we're walking. We want infrastructure spending to ramp up right now, right? So that you can create the jobs that need to be done anyway. We need to build more childcare centers. We need to renovate and build more long-term care facilities. We need to renovate houses. We need to probably retrofit shopping malls and maybe office towers. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. Where's that money coming from? Some of it is public sector and can be done. Some of it is going to be private sector, and God knows there's a ton of money out there, but it's not ready to be deployed yet. So there is that delay. The second delay is, of course, the pandemic. You don't know where the demand is that's going to come up. You don't know how sick people can get. Like, not all work sites are safe. So you've got some drag there just because of illness, particularly in a large market like Toronto. And then the third drag is that we've got skill shortages, and it takes time to develop the people that are leaving that you're trying to replace. And that's where the real rub comes in for the opportunities that might be available to the next generation of Canadians and Canadian residents, is that what business always reaches for is off-the-shelf ready people. And that often means importing the solution rather than training it at home. And I think we're going to have to be really vigilant about that.
So to that point, I mean, if we choose to give preferential options to people who do not already live here, what does this mean for the Canadian labor market?
Well, nothing good. But the other thing too is that, all over the world, we're starting to see a real pressure for the trades to permit badging instead of just a full ticket, right? So, for example, in the United States, about 4 or 5 years ago, people weren't becoming full carpenters. They weren't going through the entire apprenticeship program to become a carpenter. They were, a Red Seal, anything, plumber, carpenter, whatever. They were getting badges to do things like hanging doors or, installing certain types of things required for new and retrofit builds, so that you wouldn't be caught flat-footed with not enough people to complete your job. But none of those people had the full range of skills. So that's going to be a challenge too from a trades perspective, is how much do you want to make the ability to pick up skills to do the job so there aren't labor shortages? How much do you want to break that down into modules? And of course, you can always build up modules and be a full, fully ticketed journeyman. Journeywoman, what do you call them when we're being gender neutral? But anyway,
yep.
Journey person.
Yep.
But my point is, there are challenges on both sides of that challenge of labor shortages, and the wolf at the door is there's always somebody outside of Canada that's willing to come in and do it cheaper, and that's a tricky space to be in when you're talking about labor shortages.
What would be needed to maximize the participation of Canadian residents to fulfill job vacancy in construction?
I think we need more access to cheaper training, more supports for people so that, you look at the demographics, there's going to be more people that are in their early 20s, late teens, early 20s, right up to their 30s that are entering the field because they can see that it's a growth area. Guess what? Those people, by and large, tend to form families and have children. So if you think that childcare is just the thing that is stopping a woman like Patricia from doing it, far from it. There's going to be issues for young families going forward. We're going to have the smallest working age cohort we have seen since the 50s that are going to be lifting up more people who are too young, too old, and too sick to work than we've seen since the 50s and 60s. Except this is not going to go on for a few years. This is going to go on for decades. So we know that we need to support our working age population better, and childcare is going to be one part of it. Might also include things like mobility assistance. If we are willing to let employers pay to recruit people from overseas to bring them here, maybe we should be willing to support people to move from one part of the country to another within Canada to take advantage of opportunities that are there. I'm particularly thinking about Indigenous populations that might want to get the work experience that is available, but it's very expensive to travel and then find a place to live, particularly in expensive cities like Toronto. So I think there are things we could do that are policy amenable, that are actually able to bring more people into the fold. But I am mindful of the fact that becoming a journeyman is 9,000 hours. That's years of work. And so this is the time to be investing. And as the clock ticks, we're going to have to turn more and more to importing the solution rather than having homegrown opportunities to qualify and upskill the people that we have.
And again, in doing research for this, I came across a line that was saying the Canadian government has been talking about creating a national childcare plan since 1970. What have been the barriers to make this a reality, in your opinion?
The story has been historically jurisdiction. There's something a little bit darker about this, though, because even back in 1970, with the report on what you're referring to is the report on the Royal Commission on the Status of Women, which raised the issue that childcare was critical to helping women and men realize their full potential. And the thing about childcare is, in our society, we view whether you get married or not, or have children or not, your choice. You do it your way. If you choose to have a child and you want to work, your choice. Do it your way. If you need to find care because you chose to work, do it your way. We're not going to tell you what kind of childcare. You want to get a nanny and you can afford to get a nanny. You want to have your neighbor down the street or your the grandparents of the child take care of it. Go for it. We're not going to make public policy the mechanism by which that choice is defined. So there's both the jurisdictional issue, which is who's going to pay for this, and are there going to be kind of roughly similar forms of access across the country? The answer is no. Quebec is the best place for getting childcare, affordable childcare, but the quality is crap, and they know it. Ontario is the best place for childcare if you're 4 or 5 years old, because you get 6 hours of free guaranteed care with full day JK and junior kindergarten and senior kindergarten. Beyond those 6 hours, you're on your own. So, the variability across the country is insane. And we could have more roughly consistent access to care. And we may be on the verge of that because the federal government is seeming, the lights just went on at home, that there is a relationship between macroeconomic recovery and she-covery and childcare. So, if the fall economic statement is any indication, we should see something in the budget that says, yeah, we're going to be moving towards improving both affordability, affordability, quality, and quantity of childcare across the country from wherever that province is starting. We're going to support every province from wherever they're starting to improve that. But right now, there's a bit of a bun fight about, you're not the boss of me. You can't tell me what to do. Just give me the money and I'll decide what to do. Well, that won't work. So we'll see where we go with it. The jurisdictional issue has always been the Achilles heel. But as I say, underlying that is this kind of antipathy towards supporting women in any kind of broad-based policy way, even though there's been a social revolution in how we raise our children, from about a third of women being at work to about a third of women being at home now. Exact inversion from when the Status on Royal Commission, the Royal Commission on the Status of Women was published. So social revolution in what we actually do, and no public policy response to meet that revolution. yet.
Thank you, Armine. I appreciate that. We're gonna go over to Hartley to talk a little bit about the labor shortage in the motive power industry. Hartley, the first question I have for you, sir, is what is the difference between a construction apprenticeship and automotive apprenticeship, and are there different kinds of supports available to each?
Good afternoon, Brandon. Thank you for putting this together. I feel honored to be a part of the panel. As someone that actually went through the apprenticeship system from the get-go, like I was one of the guys that was sweeping the floor in the corner. There's definitely a substantial difference between pursuing an apprenticeship in construction and pursuing an apprenticeship in the motive power. The construction sector seems to be a little more organized. I think that's because of the existence of a lot of unions, a lot of trade associations that seems to be able to put little infrastructures in place that could assist in the construction sector. The motive power, I could say, is more along the lines of the wild, wild west. You know, you have to make sure you find someone who's attached to a shop. And then you kind of have to hopefully schmooze the boss to get into that shop. And hopefully he's got a position for you, understanding that you're going to be doing a lot of grunt work in terms of cleaning cars. Not to say you don't do grunt work in the construction industry, but, you know, you're starting right at the bottom, you're cleaning cars because there's a sense of you don't want to damage a product for a customer until you kind of learn the ins and outs and how to deal with that product, right? As I said before, with the existence of the unions in the construction industry, there's just a lot more resources available for the construction industry. This panel and this discussion is a classic example of resources that is available even at a discussionary level that is not available in the motive power industry. I advocate on the behalf of the motive power industry tremendously because, you know, I like to say everything I have, I actually attribute to the motive power industry. A lot of people disagree with that. They say everything I have is attributed to me. But at the end of the day, I got it through the motive power industry, right? And I fell in love with the automobile, and I fell in love with the sense of satisfaction I got from providing a good product to the public, right? So, you know, it's one of these discussions that's going to go on for a long period of time. It's hard to even hammer down one definite reason for the differences, apart from obviously also environment. You know, a lot of the shops, a lot of places where you work in construction, you're in the elements. That's one thing you have to take in consideration, where you're in a mechanic shop, or, you know, you're more contained and you're more, you know, I worked in a shop that was an air conditioned environment, which, you know, a lot of people never heard of, but, you know, it does exist, but still difference. Because I think the unions, more associations, more support on one aspect of things. People also really push the construction industry as a more profitable and viable trade for trade people. So, you know, you're dealing with that stigma as well, right? That the motive power, you don't make as much if you're in it versus when you're in the construction sector.
Okay. And can you talk a little bit about, in your opinion, is there a labor shortage in the motive power industry, and has COVID-19 impacted this?
Well, you know what, there definitely is a labor shortage. That labor shortage actually was actually looming underneath the background when the Ontario College of Trades came out. Because what happened was you had a lot of individuals that were practicing a lot of these trades that were unlicensed. So, and obviously there's an aging population. When the Ontario College of Trades came out and enforcement came out, a lot of them decides to hit the road, right? They're just like, you know what, I've been doing this for a while. I've made whatever money I can, whatever. I'm not even going to bother going any further, because now there's an enforcement and there's a compliance division that's looking into that. I'm curious to see what happens after the pandemic dies out and we see what is going on with these businesses, because all the numbers are skewed right now because there's layoffs. I'm contacting shops and they're telling me that they're, laying people off. Prior to the pandemic, it was difficult to walk into a mechanic shop or a motive power industry shop and them not ask, hey, where can I find someone new? Where can I find someone, what could I do? So there's always this sense that, yeah, we need more people to come in. Now with the pandemic in, people are actually starting to stay home. Not a lot of people are moving around anymore. So you find that the servicing and maintenance of vehicles are not necessarily going on as much as they should. So obviously everything is taking a little bit of a hit. So it's very difficult to really even put a finger or pinpoint that kind of a situation right now. We're really going to have to get out of this pandemic and then step back and go and see what exactly is going on. One of the things I wanted to say, though, we're kind of reaping the seeds that we've sowed over the last, I want to say, 20, 25 years. The trades were never necessarily promoted at a certain level with intentions that at some point we're going to start having a labor shortage because of the older generation getting out of it. So what you found over time, I think in the high schools, elementary schools, however soon you want to start them, I don't think there was a big push in delivering the trades to the young minds so that they can actually focus on or think about it as a viable career later on. And now we're at the point now where we're looking for these individuals and we're looking for these people and we're going, listen, you can make a lot of good money. You can make it this, you can make it that. If you look at the stats, a lot of people that are getting into the trade, it's actually like their second attempt at a career of some sort. The average apprentice is almost 28, 29 years old. By this time, a lot of them have been to the universities and thought that, hey, I want to, make my money sitting around a computer, sitting on the desk or not getting my hands dirty. And they realize very early on that, I can make $120,000, $130,000, $150,000, getting up at 7 o'clock, getting home by 3. Unfortunately, I'm either out in the elements and I'm getting my hands dirty. So it's, which one are we going to go after, right?
You touch on something that I've heard a lot in both construction and motive power, which is, can you talk about, have you seen a difference in terms of investment made into the high schools or post-second or high schools rather, in like, say, the shops compared to now? Do you see less investment now, and what impacts is that having on the industry? You kind of touched on it just now.
Well, you know what, I would really love to see a list of all the high schools out there that actually have a, let's say, an automotive mechanic shop or something that is very motive power based attached to it, and give these students a very deep hands-on experience for that. The numbers for that has actually shrunk tremendously, which ultimately causes a problem later on when, at these times when young minds are open and willing to search and strive for new things, and they don't experience even a spark of something at some point, that opportunity is lost, right? But definitely when you look at the construction and you go into the school, it is pushed. It is, if anything, it's pushed more than the motive power, because everybody say, well, you could make a half decent money. And if you're a plumber, you'll make you get paid a service call, you make $150 before you even open up the door. So, before you even knock at the door. So it's definitely, there's more push towards the construction sector in terms of investments in the school. I think, again, we go back to the fact that all the associations and all the unions kind of have a little more deeper pockets that can probably, the private sector that could probably facilitate this. And I think that a lot of the support money that comes for the apprenticeship or the training for the motive power comes probably more so from the government, right? So there's definitely a lopsided in the amount of funds that is pushed in the directions of the trade to attract those young minds.
Okay. Thank you for that. What kind of supports are needed for pathways to careers in motive power for women and other marginalized folks, for example, Indigenous, LGBTQ folks, newcomers, etc.?
Wow. Well, definitely, what you don't know, you don't know. So definitely advertising campaigns that actually paints the way and direction towards a trade. I think there needs to be a bit of a culture shift right across the boards, especially when it comes to the trades, especially motive power trades. Talking from example, when I got into the trade, the first person that was given the privilege, because I think it should be seen as a privilege, when an apprenticeship is signed up and a sponsor gets an apprentice behind them, beside them to assist them in whatever work, I think they should consider that a privilege. And I don't think that is considered a privilege. I think they make it look like more of a chore. And half of these individuals don't really necessarily understand or know how to train individuals at that level. taking that now and applying it to having a person coming in, indigenous person, marginalized community coming in, and they have this maybe not necessarily great structure in place that could present itself as a training. That could cause some problem because there's no structure there. So, having one sense of contact so that any one of these communities can actually bang on, whether it be on a phone call or whether to a website that could get a full scope of information, speaking to the trade that they're looking for. The college was trying to put something like that out there with their website. Definitely funding because at the end of the day, depending on the trade you're in, it does take certain resources to even start or present that trade. If you're a mechanic and you don't have a box that's worth $50,000 worth of tools, especially with a modern day vehicle, you're going to get left behind. And like every trade is different. There definitely needs to be almost like a specific look on each one of these trades and each one of the recommendations or requirements to come into the trade, because every trade is different. Taking this whole blanket approach to the trades is not going to bode very well. Different minds gets into different trades attract different people. And overall, the individuals that are in the trade kind of outline the vibe of the trade, I should say.
Okay. And the last question I'm going to ask you, is there an issue around childcare for parents who work in the motive power sector? And do you see any solution for this?
Definitely, there is an issue with that. It is not spoken to and discussed very much because obviously it's a male-dominated industry, and a lot of times you don't have necessarily the child attached to the male. Now that there is this massive push for the introduction or massive push for females to come into the trade, this is becoming more. It's always been an issue, but this is becoming more and more a discussion, especially when it surrounds the trades. I think I told you a story where I'm a weekend warrior for my kids, and in the summer I had my kids half the time, and here I am have to go into the college to teach a class, and I just so happened to have the kids, and I'm in that situation I felt very guilty when I had to work and then I had my kids because I had such limited time. And if it wasn't for my boss that actually turned to me and go, you know what, I needed to teach a class, come in, I'll watch the kids for the couple hours for me and for you, and you facilitate your class, and back and forth, stuff like that made it showed the deficiency. There definitely has to be a discussion on it. There definitely has to be something to be put in place that could facilitate someone going forward. And this is not a male or female thing. This is do you need that service, and how could that service be put forward to help your situation, right? So definitely this is something that is going to raise to the forefront. And like Armine said, if the economics of Canada is going to go in that direction to be uplifted after this pandemic, a lot of these discussions and a lot of these foundation work has to be put in place for us to move forward. So is there a solution? Definitely. Is it something for the motive power that's going to have to probably dealt with, or at least spearhead by the private sector, and hopefully maybe funded a little bit by the public sector, by the government, and then they're going to have to do something. But it's definitely going to be a problem that's going to be a hell of a lot worse than what it is right now.
I mean, you kind of touched on it in our pre-interview, and you mentioned that in construction you'll find more unions. For motive power, you find it's hard to find as much unions, and correct me if I'm wrong. And the money that is going to be taken to do this, a shop is not going to necessarily upfront put the money into create a daycare or something that's solution orientated, right? It's just really trying to keep the doors open.
Well, yeah, it's definitely a profit-based business, and if they don't see any profit coming out of whatever money they're putting out, it's not anything they're going to want to invest in. As I said to you before, why can't we start an association in the motive power? Why can't we start a union? I said, go to any one of these technicians and say to them, you know what, I want 10 cents for every dollar that you're going to make. And it's going to take me 5 years to show you whatever benefits I can give you. I could probably speak to you on the benefits right now, but I'm going to take this money from you, and to take you 5 years to see what you're going to get for it. Yeah, okay, you try sell that to most people. That's not something that's not going to happen, and that's what's going to have to happen. And them going to have to realize what that needs to happen for them to be able to implement these resources, to be able to improve the sector, to be able to improve the trade, to be able to, you walk in, give a presentation at any level, right? High school or whatever. And when you lay the groundwork or the framework out for it, it actually looks like a viable opportunity based on the infrastructures that are put in place with daycare, with tool management, with job placements, with apprenticeship assistance, all that. Those are all things that is very difficult to find that under one roof. The government does have a few things in place, but it's very general, and we're going to need things that is trade specific, industry specific, so hopefully we all can come to some kind of a consensus, and we can actually, one hand washes the other. The motive power maybe supports the construction when it comes to certain things. The construction supports the motive power in something when it comes to certain things, because at the end of the day, we're all trades. Right. And we'll have similar situations, although we're going to have to take different approaches to address them.
Okay. Hartley, I appreciate that feedback. Next up, we're going to be going to Patricia to talk directly about the impacts of daycare and working mothers. Patricia, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am. So can you maybe talk to us about, why did you want to get into construction when you got here to Canada?
A little bit like Hartley said, at the beginning, I thought I wanted an office job, that I wanted to do the, like logistics and all that. And I went into that. But then slowly you start studying other trades, and you see that what really fits your type, your personality, is something different, something that makes you feel more accomplished, because construction is something that you start in one place and then you go to another one, and you feel like you are doing something and finishing, and then start something again. So I just decided I want to make this jump, I want to make this change. And thank God I found the Quick Start program, and a staff member introduced me to it. And it reassured me that that was the way that I wanted to go. And that was a way that I can start, right? Learning and really knowing what I wanted.
Okay. And you talked about the Quick Start program. Can you talk a little bit about, what brought you into the Quick Start program? And did you have any issues around childcare while you're in the program?
Well, a couple of friends of mine talked to me about it, and I decided to dig a little bit into it. And then in a meeting, by chance, I met one of the staff, and we got into talking into it. And they also showed me all the benefits that I will have, and also the help that I will have with childcare, because that was one of the main reasons I will go to a program, because I was working in the morning, and then what am I going to do in the afternoon, right? So that's a way that made me and helped me to go into it. And yeah, they helped me a lot with the childcare, and I was able to pay a person and to be able to be present in the classes.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about, so not only are you a graduate of the Quick Start pre-apprenticeship program, you also finished the Next Gen Builders mentorship program as a mentee, and then you got placed into a construction union, but you haven't been able to take on any jobs. Why is that?
Well, everything goes around the kids, right? My kids, and as Armine was saying, here the quality is really good. In the daycares, my kids were extremely happy. They went there from 1 year old and I was happy, also able to work and study and all that. But all of a sudden, when both kids got into the school age, subsidy, right? So to be able to accept a job offer and also be able to have the kids in school and pay daycare or pay a salary to a caregiver, it was there is no way that I can do it right now unless I'm able to do it. And the main thing was like when the kids went to school, right there, I wasn't able to get the subsidy because I worked the previous year. So I don't know how they made the calculation, how they, how they say, okay, you make enough money to have to pay for daycare and also to support a family by yourself. I really don't understand how they calculate that. So that took me out of my place. It shackles like shook everything. My house, the daycare, my workplace. I worked until last year. So I'm hoping this year, how can I say, I'm able to get the subsidy, right? Because I worked less last year. So I say, okay, that's my hope. So, like there is no balance really. So it means I have to work less to be able to get the subsidy, but then, I'm struggling, right? Like all the time.
When
Like
you and when you and I were talking, you mentioned something that I felt was really sobering, and you mentioned, you kind of touched on it just now, but you mentioned in 2020 you are not eligible to receive subsidy because you worked in 2019. So the cost for daycare of your 2 children equated for $2,000 a month, and that was for 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon.
In the
And
afternoon only.
and I thought about, like, how is that possible? So that leads me to my next question is, with the cost of daycare, are you able to survive on a first-year apprenticeship wage?
No, there is no way. There is no way that I can survive. If I don't have the subsidy and the help, there is no way that I can pay rent, car, insurance, food, the basics. There is no way. For now, no.
That's really challenging. And as a single parent, does the cost of daycare makes it feasible to go out and work?
No. If there is no subsidy, it doesn't make it. Like I say, I really hope I am able to get the subsidy this year, because I want to work and I also want my kids to go to daycare because they feel happy over there. They have many activities and it's through the year and they're missing all that. Right now we are here in the house. Hopefully, I know it's not something that only concerns to me, but hopefully when everything starts opening, they have the chance to go out and to have more activities to do, because as a single parent working and then getting home to cook, to clean, the kids really don't have all the time that they deserve with the sports and everything that is needed.
I appreciate that. I'm going to open it up to some questions from the audience. Someone put something. Please, you can write directly into the chat, and we could answer. The panelists can answer the question, or if you'd like to come on and ask your question directly, just write in the chat that you'd like to speak. So I'm going to give a couple of moments. Okay, we have. Okay. Gillian, do you want to? I'll bring Gillian over just to kind of make mention of her comment. Let's find Gillian. Hi, Gillian. Gillian, can you hear me?
Hi.
Hey, Gillian. Yes, you wrote into the chat. Do you want to just
Yeah. First of all, thank you very much. This has been really, really interesting, and I love the different perspectives. It's really helpful to have such a range of perspectives because we're all trying to solve essentially the same problem: how to get good work, to do the work that's going to be necessary in the coming years. I was really taken with something Hartley said about outlining the vibe of each of the trades, because that's something like when we're working with our partners in the social services sector who are trying to get good information out to community and saying, are you interested in working in construction? There's such a huge range of construction trades that people are saying, well, I don't know, what does it involve? And we can't really answer that question really very well. And when we know there are, like, the City of Toronto or the hospital or the university wants to hire locally, and they say, we'd like to hire local apprentices, and they go out to community and say, you should get into the trades, it's also general. So anyhow, all that to say, I'm wondering if Hartley has some ideas or others have ideas about how we can get that kind of idea about what is the vibe of each of the different trades, so people don't waste their time going through one trade before they find the one that they really want to do.
Awesome. Thank you, Gillian.
Yeah, let me unmuting is always important, especially when you're speaking to a screen. Okay, so I chose that word because every trade has its again its own little unique innuendos and issues within it that the guys will have to either navigate through, enjoy, or just be a part of. If you're looking for information that is trade specific, the Ontario College of Trades does have fact sheets on their website for a lot of the, especially the compulsory trades. There's 23 of them, 10 in the motive power sector, 11 in the motive power sector, 10 in the construction sector, 1 in the service industry. And that just gives you a general on approximate wage, approximate tasks in which you'll be performing, and stuff like that, in which you can pass on to someone that is looking into what they want to do. It's very difficult when I use the word vibe. I guess it's very difficult for you to do that without spending a little bit of time around the individuals or in the trade and see how they behave. As a compliance and enforcement inspector, the first person that ever threw something at me was an electrician. I'm not saying anything bad. I'm just saying the first person ever threw something at me. Most times I walk into a mechanic shop and I will a lot of times get not opposition, but get a nice, solid, debatable, destructive conversation with them. I engage with a plumber, and a plumber reminds me of an auto body guy because that trade seems to be a little bit more artistic. So for whatever reason, the minds of these individuals kind of behave the same. So, but when as I said, when I say vibe, it's all about just getting out there, spending some time in and around that trade itself, seeing how they interacting with the individuals, because you'll find a multitude and a vast degree or array of individuals that are out there. But as for information for trade specific, and I'm sure the government will have something in place going forward, because the college was trying to really put a database together where you could go to a one-stop shop website and find resource information about the trades.
Okay, does anyone else want to answer that question? If not, I'm going to bring on the next question, the next individual. That was Elvie Morrow, who's doing great work with the Toronto District School Board. Just wait for Elvie to transfer over so he can make his comment or question. Elvie, are you there?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm trying to see how to get the camera on here. There we go. Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank Brandon for putting this this talk together. Brandon, we finally get to meet again. I'd like to just comment on, for those of you who don't know me, I run a program called Step to Construction with the Toronto District School Board. And I started this program back in 2004. So 16 years ago, the vision that I had was, why are the newspapers indicating that we have a shortage in trades? And what are we doing about it? So I started a program called Step to Construction, which allows students an opportunity to try different trades. So it's been very successful. We've grown the program to 2 teachers now over the last number of years. But my push has always been, we have solutions within our own country. We have solutions within Toronto that we really aren't exploring. And Hartley, you really touched upon it, man. You know, when you talked about our school system, I've watched the decline of auto shops and trade shops. How can a student not one student, we have, just so you know and appreciate, just within the Toronto District School Board, we have 73,000 high school students. How is it that they're not going into the trades? My mind is baffled.
They're not exposed to it.
Sorry?
They're not
Exactly.
exposed to it at the time when they should be.
You got it. So I think we need to advocate through TCBN, through the governments, the different platforms, that we need to put some resources into the schools and market. It was interesting that Patricia said that she found a career that fit her. Well, isn't that the goal? That should be the goal of all of us. Imagine not getting up in the morning and hating where you go to work for 30 years. That would be the worst feeling for any of our children.
That is.
So why aren't we exploring that? And I'm a son of an immigrant who came here, and the work he could get was being a bricklayer, slugging it back in the 60s. So I know what that means. But at the same time, we have enough human resource within the Toronto school system that we just have to find those kids that fit the career. They're there, but we're not giving them the opportunity. We're actually telling the good trades kids to sit still for 75 minutes a period every day. And they can't. They got to move. They got to do stuff.
Yeah.
Why aren't we finding them and giving them an opportunity to make a good living so they can buy a house, a car, etc.?
Sorry, Brandon, let me just interject here. Yeah, now you're touching on something that's even more systemic when you really think about it, because, you know, a lot of times a parent is not necessarily want to really push their kids towards the trades. They'll turn to them and say, you know what, you need a university education, you know, and you need, and I'm not knocking it, right? You know, if I knew I was going to do what I do for a living now, probably I would have stayed in school a little bit longer. Because, you know, it hit me by surprise when I just realized that I wanted to learn my trade to the point where I could teach it, not just do it, right? I want to be able to speak to it on a really high theoretical level. And I'm so happy that I took that approach, because that's what put me in, you know, where I am today. But, you know, a lot of times, you know, at the dinner table, you know, driving down the street in the car, looking around at our environment and seeing what trades do for it, I don't think that is communicated to the generation. I don't think that's communicated to the younger generation to show them what a spectacular thing can be built from the hands. And then also too, we also have a situation, I'm not knocking any generation, that there's this sense of entitlement where things should be given to me and nothing should be worked hard for. So we even dealing with that at a different level, because, you know, I would get apprentices on the floor, and it would take me a couple, you know, when I was on the floor, it would take me a couple of weeks with them to let them understand that, listen, you have to work. You have to lean into it. The work will be rewarded, and it can be rewarded, but how much are you going to put into it? What effort are you going to put forward? You know, at the end of the day, this is not just, you know, fly by night and, you know, you walk away from it. When you're done, you're done. No. You got to put some effort. There's a certain sense of responsibility, and it's important work you're doing. And I think once they got that and realized that there's a sense of worth within the trade, then I started seeing them fly, and then I started seeing them blossom, right? But there's a whole bunch of systemic issues that we're dealing with when we start talking about, you know, the kids are not being exposed to it. The kids don't think it's a viable piece of viable source of employment. A lot of other things, a lot of other topics that we could address at that young age that I don't think is put forward properly.
Yeah, I would like to jump in on the same subject. That is not only the schools, but also parents that have that type of stereotype. You know, I was one that when I say I want to go to construction, people say, oh, you're going back. Why you want to go backwards instead of forward? I said, what do you mean I'm going backwards? No, you're in an office, it's clean and this and that. And that means that I'm going backwards. Mm-hmm. So that is in the mentality of a lot of people. Like it's a dirty job, that is a heavy job, that only people that really have a need for it to do it will do it. So parents have that in their mind. and the school doesn't support it. And, you know, a kid doesn't feel like it will go there. It will feel sometimes like, okay, I know they make a lot of money, but it's because it's so bad that they are doing it and there's nobody to do it. So that is a change of mind that has to be done on everybody. And yeah, I'm telling you, I got a lot of people, you know, including my parents. Are you crazy? Why are you gonna do that? Why are you gonna taught your kids? I said, my kids are seeing me working since they were born. I have never stopped working. And whenever they feel that they want to do something, they will do whatever they want to do. I'm not gonna push them to go to university. You wanna be a singer, be a singer. You wanna play, you play. You know, it's something that has to be built since in the society, not only in the school, you know, everywhere.
Patricia, I'd like to just jump in because I lived what you said. My father was a bricklayer, and he told me if I pick up a trowel that I'll be in big trouble. So he definitely didn't want me to be in a bricklayer anyways. And I was a good student, so I went the pathway of university. But I'll tell you, if I pick up a trowel today and I do a line of bricks, they will be straight. And though I can build a wall really good. And it's natural. It's like a natural ability. So why aren't we giving students the opportunity to try? And like Hartley said, if they don't try, how are they going to know what fits them the best? And there's something to be said, and we're not telling kids this. There's something to be said to go to work, put in an honest day's work, and at 3 o'clock, put your tools in your trunk, go home, and look after your family. What's wrong with that? Like, I think that's awesome. I bring home work every night, and I'm up late doing work. My dad would be home at 5 o'clock, want his dinner, and then he was too tired to do anything else, unfortunately. But these are the choices that we make. But if you don't know, you can't make the right choice that fits you. And Patricia, you hit it on the nose. You know, when you said it has to fit your personality. How do we teach people? How do we teach elementary students, secondary students, parents, guidance counselors, that we better figure out what's inside the person before we direct them to university, college? And apprenticeship is usually not even mentioned in high school, by the way. So we have a long way to go, but you know, maybe our small group here can influence change, and I believe we have to if we want to solve this problem. Otherwise, we have to open up immigration again, and I still think we have the population that we can at least solve a portion of the issue.
I do, sorry, Brian, and that's 2 seconds. I got a little story. I do somewhat support homegrown because I think that, as you say, there's enough resources and talent here. It just has to be harvest and actually given the opportunity to grow. A quick story. A couple of years ago, you have the Take Your Kids to Work initiative here in Toronto, where I think is grade 9. The kids get to accompany to work. And my daughter at the time, my daughter says, Daddy, I really want to take the opportunity to come to work with you on this particular day. And I said, well, sure, no problem. But the problem is that I actually had 2 jobs that I was doing in this particular day. I had my day job, which is more, I had an administrative background. And then I had a class at the college, which was more obviously trade oriented. So I said, you know what, this is a perfect opportunity. If you don't mind spending the day with me, I'll give you, I'll put you to work with my day. You can vet certain individuals for me. I'll show you a few files. I'll show you a couple of things, and I'll show you what I do when I'm sitting around my desk when you think I'm not doing anything, right? Perfect. We facilitated the day, and then I had an afternoon class that started about 7 o'clock. And you say, you want to come with me? Sure, absolutely. And every time I've taken her to the class, she becomes my little assistant. I dress her up in her work boots and get her all her safety gear and stuff like that. And she came to the class, and I was able to set her up in a little workstation. And get her to do similar tasks like what my students were doing, which was hands-on training. And actually, it was welding. We're playing around with it. And you know what? And she did the day. We finished. Okay, we're heading home. And my daughter looked over at me and I said, "So how was your day?" She goes, "Daddy, it was fantastic." I go, did you draw any conclusions from the day?" She goes, "Yeah." I go, "What?" She goes, "I realize I don't want to sit behind a desk for the rest of my life." And she said that at that age, right? And I'm like, power to you. You let me know. I will support you no matter which way you slice it. She's in university now for social work. So I guess the trade discussion didn't go anywhere. But the bottom line is that that tie to that university, even at that point that I saw this bright light, and I was not going to limit where she wanted to go. Whatever I could put forward to help her with whatever resource, I would lay down in the road for her. But that's where she chose, right?
Okay.
And I felt it was the whole mindset towards a trade is so skewed and I don't even know the word for it, that even when they show that little bit of glimmer of hope or interest in it, if it's not taken and fed properly and given some place for them to put it. I didn't realize I was OCD with lines until I became a bodyman. And all of a sudden, that was one of my secrets on why I was probably so successful, because I wouldn't leave a line on a car that wasn't straight or at least curved to properly, because it would bother me in my sleep. If I could have harvested that at age 18 and not figured this out at age 27, how further would I have been in my trade? Anyway, that's all.
Thank you, Dr. Hartley. So I brought up Felix. Felix, if you don't mind turning your camera on and unmuting. I know you mentioned you're having some audio issue. To ask you a question. Felix, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, hi there.
Hey.
Thank you so much for all the wonderful insight, and I absolutely agree that childcare is super important. So I have two questions on that. The first is, governments take a while to set things up. So, it's going to take them a while to set up childcare. So what are some of the short to medium term policy interventions that governments can immediately kind of put in place to provide that relief and that support for women and families in trade? And the second question I have is, what is the role of the construction industry and trade unions to provide those supports? Is it just government, or what is the role of the employer and the trade unions?
Thank you for your question, Felix. Armine, do you want to go ahead with that? Or anyone else that wants to answer the question?
Well, I can talk by my experience. Unions and employers have zero input on it. So there is nothing that tells them, or they don't feel like they have the responsibility or even the sympathy to say, okay, let's put aside a fund for our workers that have kids, men and women, right? So workers right now, I'm not sure if they're thinking about it, maybe not. Employers, I mean. This is part of something that has to be bigger, has to be work with insurance companies and I believe and the government together, because this is something, it costs money. It really costs money because taking care of a child, has no price. I will pay whatever, but it's something that takes a lot from the government. I know that, but the government can do better. I know that for sure.
Well,
just what I want to say.
Sometimes you can say the government can do better. Sometimes the government doesn't even know. I'm not knocking the government. I'm a big believer in following the money. So I think any form of financial aid that could attach itself, like Patricia said, attach itself to whether it be an apprenticeship / parent / kids of a certain age group, anything that could provide some financial relief and support that could spearhead that money towards assisting the childcare issue, it would definitely be helpful. When daycare was one of my biggest expense, I did experience a daycare thing as a last year apprentice, going through unemployment, not having that adjusted, paying top dollar, working Saturdays so I could facilitate my daycare so I could do what I need to do for during the week. I did experience that. So it's definitely a huge problem. So, you know, any form of financial support will be great. And obviously a system that people don't come in and take advantage of it. But we're definitely going to have to try to make sure that all these apprenticeship programs, or at least these apprenticeship programs that are seeing very low numbers, we have to figure out how to attract the demographic that we're looking for and make it and broaden the demographic. So this way we can get as many people in there as possible, you know, and again, like, as I said, the kids, some of these kids don't realize some of the skills they have because no one has ever turned around and pointed it out to them, right? Instead, they're just shoo into a certain direction, and that's where someone up there thinks that they should be. So, you know, we're gonna have to deal with that problem too.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, please go ahead.
There are things that employers can do. And more employers should be more eager to say that they are providing the supports that their employees need so that they can be people magnets. They can attract the best people in the industry. And sometimes location of the service is almost as important as quality, though your quality of care is never going to be great on or near the site for children. But that will be a draw for some parents. So my recommendation would be that the best thing we could do on childcare is to be spending a lot of money right now on training more people so that there are more qualified early childhood educators, that we're not just talking about babysitting here. We're talking about actually improving the way people care for our youngest learners. And like, we're dropping the ball yet again on this thing. So we know we are losing capacity. The province has done nothing to preserve the capacity we had. The province is doing nothing to prepare for future needs. Sadly, we are looking at a federal government that has to provide the funding, but then the provincial government has to put that money to use. And I'm very nervous about the capacity of a provincial government to act when it twiddled its fingers and permitted capacity to collapse. And then say, but we have to open for business again. We have to go back to normal. But nothing it has done has helped us go back to normal. It has only helped us escalate the rate of transmission along absolutely knowable corridors of transmission. So it is up to the governments, but I'm very nervous about the capacity of this government to do anything other than make things worse, to be quite honest. And it's not because they're just incompetent. I think they're actually quite misogynist. I think they don't want more women to be at work. That's the way I read it. I don't know. Maybe maybe there's a conspiracy theory here, but like, the opportunity is totally there for more women to be working and making more money. And it seems like this is just like just let the opportunities flow to the men. This is the she session. We need more women to get back into the labor market. They can't without the childcare. The provincial government has dropped the ball on this mission. And for us to get back to normal, we need to actually vote these guys out and get a different government in. But by then, we are looking at a year and a half or more of this incredible drag on the economy. We need to be training people now. We need to be getting this provincial government to introduce 10 paid sick days and training for early childhood educators right now.
Thank you, Armine. I brought over Valerie, who made a comment. Valerie, you can unmute and turn your video on, and just if you want to speak out on your comment.
Hi, everybody, and thank you, Brandon. So I wanted to echo a lot of what Armine is saying right now. The worst time ever to take away sick days from a country that is engulfed in a pandemic. I'm with the Aboriginal Apprenticeship Board, by the way, is when we're engulfed in this pandemic. So now not only are we putting the stresses of the overwhelming reallocation of our resources, our recreating how we do things and what we do, we're putting the additional strain on parents who are possibly not working from home. They also have to educate their children. And if anybody was following the news, there was a mother who took her children over to the grandfather's place to babysit them while she went out to go and get groceries for her family during a pandemic, and she was fined $880 by the police for doing so. So our provincial government needs to do more, not less. They need to stop downloading the responsibilities that are theirs to municipalities and to people. And I think we have to put a greater expectation on employers from the perspective of, and I firmly believe this, childcare for workers is as equally important as a healthcare benefit plan that we give them for healthcare from their employers. And I don't understand why we can't look at these two things as a synonymous thing, especially when we talk about working with unions, and start maybe looking at some of the collective bargaining agreements that are out there. What can we do to push employers a little bit more to actually start facilitating some of this change that we have, that we require? Why should we have people like Patricia who are trying to determine whether or not they should be a mother or an apprentice? Why can't she be both? Why can't she be both? Why does she have to decide to stop one part of her life and fulfillment because she's also a successful mother? I don't understand why we can't put value and weight in that instead of taking it away. So I think that there's a lot more we can do as a society as a whole. There's more pressure we can put on government. There's more pressure we can put on employers. And I think we really seriously need to have employers look at taking care of the whole worker, right? And that includes the family that surrounds them too. When you lift a person, you lift a family, you lift a community. So instead of continuing to put barriers in front of people to help them meet our expectation of fulfilling the losses in our labor market for skilled trades, should we not also be putting those resources and the surrounding supports to them to help them succeed, to fill that gap? Otherwise, we're just running into the same wall every time. My thoughts.
Thank you, Valerie. No, that was super important and pointed. Thank you, Valerie, who's doing some amazing work with the Aboriginal Apprenticeship Board.
Thank you, Brandon.
No problem. So I'm mindful of time, and I want to thank the panelists and the speakers. How you can stay connected to TCBN. You can register for future career talks at our website, www.nexgenbuilders.ca/career talks. You can watch past career talks as well as this session. We're going to have this one edited and we're going to be put it on YouTube. And you can go on to follow us on Instagram at Community Benefits, as well as Twitter.